Talking Cougar football with Alex Brink, and it's good to be talking after a Cougar win. The Cougs taking down Toledo 28-7 in their return to Gesa Field in first time in over a month. Alex, first off, I just want to say how good was it to see them get a win at home? Since the Apple Cup, they've got a win. They won at Colorado State, but after a couple of tough losses, to be able to come back, be in front of the home fans, and perform really well, that has to do something for not only a fan base but a team too, right?
No doubt about it, especially, two tough road losses against ranked teams, to get back in Gesa Field and have a good crowd and it's family weekend. And, you want to take advantage of your opportunities at home, right? And, maybe for the casual fan, they don't realize how good of a football team and program Toledo is. I mean, that was a really solid win for Washington State for them to, come in and, be pretty physically dominant on the defensive side of the football, run the football well offensively. It wasn't perfect, but when you can win a game that handily when you're not perfect, that speaks volumes.
It's what's impressive to me about this game so much, obviously the defense. I mean, at this point, we should not be surprised that the Cougar defense is this prolific, is so good at keeping points on the board. But it just jumps out at me that in all four of the Cougars' wins, they've held teams to 13 or fewer points. And now in two of those wins, they've held them just to one score. In Toledo's case, it was a touchdown. At Colorado State, it was a field goal. When you are an offense and you have that kind of defense going out, whether you're scoring and have a lead or you need to get the ball back after a turnover or a punt, whatever, I have to imagine that does, great things for an offensive confidence because it's not so worried, oh, if we don't score a touchdown here, we're going to fall behind.
And even more important than that, right? If I turn the ball over, I have confidence that the defense might find a way to get off the field, right? Which it's not, you don't want to play that way all the time, but that's one thing I will say is that for Zevi Eckhaus, he was probably a little loose with the football and a couple interceptions there could have been the difference in that game. Going against the Cougs, but the defense stepped up, and we've seen that a few different times. So, yes, for an offense, it gives you a ton of confidence when you got a defense that can really match up against any offense. Look, if teams can't score more than two touchdowns, they're going to have a hard time winning against you, right? As long as you're semi-efficient offensively. So, I think to your point about the games they have won, they've held teams under 14 points, even against Virginia and Ole Miss. I mean, they held those teams to season lows. In the next couple of weeks, you saw both those teams have monster games. So, yeah, I think the Coug defense is playing really well.
What really jumped out to me about this game was the second quarter on offense. Three straight drives the Cougars get in the end zone. Two of them are long, methodical drives, and then one's kind of a hurry up drive. But Alex, all three of those drives were 80 or longer yards. And that felt like to me, even though on some of those drives it wasn't as much running as maybe Jimmy Rogers would like to see, and it was maybe a little bit more through the air, although he did say this week he doesn't care where the yards and the points come from. It really felt to me like that second quarter, that stretch of three straight drives, maybe is like the ceiling or how good this offense can be when everything is firing on the right cylinders.
I think it was a good example of to your point, what this offense can be, which is balanced. It wasn't, they're not going to only run the football and they're not going to only throw the football. And it's not going to be only running backs running the football. It'll be quarterbacks running the football. And it's going to be quick passes and play action and shot plays. And, all of that goes in to what I think Danny Freund wants to do offensively. And I've been pleasantly surprised, honestly, with the bones of what this offense has been this year, right? It hasn't been perfect, and it's not the air raid style that Washington State is used to, but it's winning football, and it's got the right mix of things, even more as they get their players in, and having some injuries on the offensive line hurts. But again, you saw a great mix. Zevi Eckhaus had 15 carries, Kirby Voorhees had 15 carries. I think Leo Pulasi had 6 or 7. You had the shot plays downfield to Josh Meredith, Carter Pabst. Again, I just think it's a really good mix, and when they get it right, they can be really good.
One of my favorite moments of the game was Carter Pabst hauling in that reception, that bobble on the way down for his first career touchdown. I just have to imagine, this is a guy that can be a difference maker, and we've seen him be a difference maker. Jimmy Rogers almost couldn't believe it when we told him after the game that was his first career touchdown because it seems like every time he touches the ball, it's some big electric play. But for a freshman receiver to come in, I mean, this is a guy playing high school football this time last year. Just what does that say about, the level of talent to be that good that early?
It's really hard to do. I mean, the guys that I play with that did it were guys like Michael Bumpus and Brandon Gibson. So, those are some all-time greats here, right? And so as a true freshman to come in, it's, there's a lot to it, right? Playing receiver, it's not just about running routes and catching balls. You got to be physical in the blocking game. You got to be physical at the line of scrimmage. And, he's shown that, right? He came in really prepared, I think physically, had a great mentality, had a good fall camp. And as he's gotten more in the mix, he's become an important part of this offense. So much so that the last couple of weeks when he's been out, the coaches kind of very specifically told me, they're kind of shaking their head like, man, Carter Pabst is out, right? And so that just tells you that he plays a big role in the game plan, and they were excited to get him back against Toledo. And then Zevi Eckhaus as a quarterback clearly showed his trust in him. I mean, that throw is not a gimme, right? He's kind of just giving a player a chance, and to do that for a freshman means he really believes in him.
Absolutely, for good reason, it seems like.
Sure.
Last thing about Toledo before we turn the page to Oregon State. Obviously, in the second half, we had some off-field activities up there in the top of the student section. A growing number of students taking their shirts off, waving them around. Pretty cool. I just wanted to ask you, what is maybe one of the wildest things you remember seeing in the crowd from your playing days? Anything that, still to this
Oh
day
my
you think
goodness.
back and, man, I can't believe that guy did that or whatever.
And it's been a long time. It doesn't I nothing comes to mind. I will say more so just from like a player standpoint, and this is kind of my plea to the Washington State, students and the fan base is like there's nothing like running on that field with a full student section and that whole place rocking, whether it's them doing the jaws or the keys or like whatever, and there's even better ones now. They got the fireball shot, all the stuff. Like it is so fun as a player, and that's the one thing I want to continue to see is these home football games that the players feel that support because look, like how fun was that? Like you had 1,000, whatever, 500 people up in the corner with, with their shirts off, waving them around. I mean, I thought that was super fun. It was a good atmosphere, and you want to continue that, right?
Absolutely. That's Pac-12 football at its best. And speaking of Pac-12, we've got the original two showing up this week. Washington State traveling to Corvallis to take on Oregon State. First of two meetings. And I think that's interesting because the Cougars are trying to win the rest of their games, win out, get bowl eligible. So really you can't keep anything under wraps, I guess, for, knowing that you'll face Oregon State a second time this year. So game planning wise, if you were in the offensive coordinator room, the quarterback room, as you're getting ready for an opponent you're going to see twice, does that change anything for you?
Not really. I mean, maybe going into the second one. I mean, the reality is the first you got to get the first one to worry about the second one, right? So, I think you kind of do that. My experience in having done this in the CFL and the NFL is, you kind again, you put your best foot forward in the game you have. Your general belief is that if you work your schemes and you trust them, then you should be able to execute them. And so, I think for me that you just go out and you play your game, right? And Oregon State's in a really unique spot right now. But they're a dangerous opponent. This is the type of opponent you really don't want to play on the road and in this moment in your season. So I think Washington State's got to be as focused as possible.
Uh, Jimmy had pointed that out. Don't look just at the record and see what Oregon State, has done throughout the earlier part of this season. You got to focus on the here and now, especially considering that, looking at their schedule, this might be their last big home game chance. I mean, you got to think that the Beeve fans are going to be up for this one. So when you look at them, Alex, what are you expecting? Because there have been positional changes, obviously a head coaching change. What are you are expecting from Oregon State this weekend?
Well, I've known interim head coach Rob Akey for a long time, and the one thing I know about Coach Ake is he can get players motivated to play, and people believe in him and buy into what he's selling, and he's had a win under his belt, then a bye week, right, and that can cure a lot of ills, frankly, especially with an opponent, kind of a rivalry opponent coming to town. So, I think the thing that concerns me about Oregon State is offensively, they're a very similar team to what we've seen in the past. They can run the football well. Anthony Hankerson's a really good back. They got a couple receiving options. They got questions at quarterback, whether it's Malik Murphy, the highly touted transfer, or Jabari Johnson, another highly touted transfer that's been there a couple years. But both of them are good players, so they can take advantage of it. And they made a play play caller change, heading into that last win, going with Danny Langsdorff, who's been at Oregon State, had been at Oregon State for years, had moved on for a few years, and is now back. So, a veteran offensive coordinator, that concerns me, right? And the defense has to come out and play well for Washington State again. I think Oregon State's defense has really struggled this year. It's hard to tell if that's scheme or players. My general take is that this Oregon State's like Washington State. They still have high caliber players, Power 5 level athletes, and if whoever it is gets them going in the right direction, they can make plays. So Washington State's got to really be focused. You can't turn the ball over on the road the way you've done a couple times this year.
Yeah, funny that the Cougs keep crossing paths with Coach Akey, whether it was at the Sun Bowl when he was with Central Michigan a few years ago,
Right.
or now. It's pretty cool, and it'll be obviously cool in a few weeks when he makes his return to Pullman. Last one, and we'll talk a little bit big picture on this one. Coach Rogers talked about how important it was for this game, national CBS broadcast of the two original Pac-12 members, and then you'll add in the rest of the conference next year. How important is it for Washington State and Oregon State to really put their best foot forward in this game? Obviously, Cougar fans would love to see a Cougar blowout win, but almost it might seem better if these two trade punches and it's some thrilling conclusion down the line that gets a lot of people to stick around to the end of this game.
Yeah, the entertainment value probably has it has some importance, I guess, in general. I think the reality is that the Pac-12 is going to be back next year. College football fans can be really fickle in the way they approach their fandom and their excitement levels. And I think once the dust settles and the new Pac-12 exists, and those games are being broadcast and people are talking about it and all the things, and whether it's Washington State, Oregon State, it doesn't matter. People are going to settle into the new reality of college football and be excited about the Pac-12 the same way they've always been, right? Nobody batted an eyelash when Colorado and Utah came in. I don't think people would have batted an eyelash as people left. It was Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12, and now it's just going to be, a few different logos. But in the end, Washington State and Oregon State have a chance to kind of be the flag bearers for it. And I think those two programs garner national attention no matter what. And you'll see when they unwind the CBS, viewership numbers on Monday following this week's game, they're going to be some of the highest rated viewing numbers just because people tune in to watch Pac-12 football across the country.
Battle of two really, really loyal fan bases that have been through a lot, but still love their Cougs and their Beavs, that's for sure. All right, getting ready for game day. You can hear Alex and the rest of the Cougar radio broadcast crew as they travel over to Corvallis. We'll also be there for swxlocalsports.com. And of course, you can hear more from Alex Brink and Michael Bumpus on Talking Cougs. Alex, Cougs 2 wins away from a bowl game. Hopefully this time next week, we're talking about them just being 1 win away from a bowl game. So we'll chat with you next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, brother. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.